don't bow your head. For the first time, Tu Diem lifted her eyes and spoke directly to CEO Toan's mother. Her voice trembled at first, but behind it was the strength of a woman who had endured too much silence, too much pain. The room froze. Every word she said was not only a defense of her love but also a cry for her dignity. It was no longer about approval or rejection, wealth or poverty. At that moment, Tu Diem stood tall, not as a fragile girl, but as a woman who refused to let her love be trampled. Her courage shook the walls of the house, and even CEO Toan himself saw her in a new light. This was more than just defiance, it was the beginning of a storm. Would Toan's mother be moved by Tu Diem's bravery, or would her anger only grow stronger? The air inside the grand living room was heavy, filled with an unspoken tension that seemed to weigh down every breath. For days, Tu Diem had endured silence, choosing humility over conflict, bowing her head each time sharp words came her way. But this evening was different. The weight of injustice, of being misunderstood, of carrying pain without a voice, it had reached its breaking point. Madame Lan, CEO Toan's mother, stood tall with her sharp gaze fixed on Tu Diem. Her words, polished yet piercing, fell like stones. You do not belong here. My son deserves a future without burdens, without shadows from your past. The room froze. Toan clenched his fists at his side, his lips pressed into a thin line. He wanted to speak, but before he could, Tu Diem lifted her head. Her eyes, no longer dimmed by fear, glistened with unshaken resolve. For too long, she began, her voice trembling at first, but then rising with strength. I have accepted your judgment in silence. I thought humility would earn your kindness. I thought if I bowed my head, you would see that I mean no harm. But today, I will no longer remain quiet. Madame Lan's expression hardened, unused to resistance. Yet Tu Diem pressed on, her voice filled with both pain and courage.
You believe I am weak, that I am only a poor woman clinging to your son. But I saved Toan when no one else was there. I stood by him when danger surrounded him. I may not have wealth. I may not have a name that shines like yours. But my heart is true, and I will not let anyone, not even you, deny that truth. A silence followed, deep and unsettling. Toan's chest swelled with pride as he watched the woman he loved refuse to bow any longer. For the first time, Tu Diem stood as his equal, not as someone to be pitied, but as someone who dared to protect her own dignity. Madame Lan's lips parted, but no words came. For a brief moment, behind her stern eyes, there was hesitation, perhaps even recognition. That night, something changed. Tu Diem was no longer the timid girl who endured quietly. She had found her voice, and in that voice lay a strength no wealth could buy. Toan reached for her hand, holding it tightly, silently promising that whatever storms came next, they would face them side by side. The silence after Tu Diem's words lingered like a storm waiting to break. Madame Lan, known for her unshakable authority, narrowed her eyes, her voice low but sharp. You are bold, Tu Diem, she said slowly, but boldness does not make you worthy of my son. Love is not enough to carry a family, not enough to stand beside a man like Toan. Tu Diem did not flinch. Her heart raced, but her eyes held steady. I know love alone is not enough, she replied, but respect, loyalty, and sacrifice, those are things I can give without measure. I never asked for Toan's wealth, nor your approval as a reward. I only ask that you see me as I truly am. Toan finally stepped forward, his voice firm, breaking the fragile air between them. Mother, I have stayed silent too long. Diem does not need to prove herself to you or anyone else. She has already proven herself to me. When I was lost, she saved me. When I was weak, she gave me strength. That is the woman I want by my side, not because she is perfect, but because she is real. Madame Lan's eyes flickered toward her son. For a moment, pride and stubbornness battled within her. She had raised Toan to be strong, independent, to lead with clarity. Yet here he was, standing between her and the woman she had tried to push away, his voice unshaken, his choice clear.
Tu Diem took a breath, her tone softer now, but still resolute. I will not bow my head anymore, madam. Not out of disrespect, but because I must honor the dignity I nearly lost. You can hate me, you can doubt me, but I will not apologize for the love I feel. I will not let myself disappear. The room grew quiet again, but this time the silence was different, less suffocating, more uncertain. Madame Lan turned away, her face unreadable, leaving only the echo of her footsteps. As the door closed behind her, Toan squeezed Tu Diem's hand. You were brave, he whispered. Braver than I have ever seen you. Tears welled in Tu Diem's eyes, not of fear, but of release. For once, I didn't feel like a shadow, she said softly. I felt alive. Toan smiled gently, pulling her close. And that's how you should always feel. With me, you'll never have to bow your head again. That night, the mansion felt strangely quiet. The echo of Tu Diem's voice still lingered in the halls, strong and unyielding. Madame Lan retreated to her room, but her thoughts refused to rest. She sat by the window, staring into the dark sky. For the first time in years, someone had dared to look directly into her eyes and challenge her authority. Her pride bristled, yet beneath it was something she did not want to admit: respect. That girl, she has fire, Madame Lan murmured to herself. But will fire burn my son, or protect him? Meanwhile, in another corner of the house, Tu Diem sat with Toan. A soft lamp illuminated the room, wrapping them in a gentle glow. She leaned against him, her heart still beating fast from the confrontation. Toan, she whispered, what if your mother never accepts me? What if my presence only brings you pain? Toan lifted her chin, forcing her eyes to meet his. Diem, listen to me. My mother is strong, but so am I, and I choose you. No matter what storms come, no matter how hard the road, I will not let go of you. You are not my weakness, you are my strength. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope. I never thought someone like you could say that to someone like me. He smiled gently. Someone like me. I am just a man, Diem. A man who was lost until you found me. Without you, all this, my company, my wealth, my power means nothing. At that moment, Tu Diem realized something. She had always been afraid of being less, of being unworthy. But Toan didn't see her as less, he saw her as more. Outside, the wind stirred the night trees, as if carrying away the last fragments of her silence. For the first time in her life, Tu Diem felt the strength of her own voice. And though she knew battles still lay ahead with Toan's family, with her past, with the world that never seemed fair, she also knew this truth: she would never bow her head again. The following days unfolded with a tense calm. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. Madame Lan carried herself with her usual grace, giving no hint of her thoughts. Yet, behind her eyes, plans were quietly forming. She had not openly rejected Tu Diem, but neither had she accepted her. Instead, she chose another path, to test her. One morning, she approached Tu Diem in the garden. Her tone was measured, almost casual, but her gaze was sharp. Diem, she began, I will not stop Toan from bringing you here. But if you wish to remain in his world, you must show me who you truly are. Words are easy. Actions are not. Tu Diem's heart tightened. She understood immediately, this was not an invitation, but a challenge. Still, She bowed her head slightly, not out of fear, but with respect. "I will not disappoint you, madam. Whatever you ask of me, I will do my best." Later that day, Madame Lan gave her a task. She sent Tu Diem to manage a small charity event. The family had long supported a scholarship program for poor children in a nearby village. At first, it seemed like a gesture of trust, but Tu Diem quickly realized it was a trial. The staff gave her cold looks, whispering doubts. Some even refused to cooperate, loyal to Madame Lan and skeptical of the newcomer. But Tu Diem did not falter. She worked tirelessly, arranging the event herself, visiting the children, preparing supplies, speaking gently with each person she met. Her sincerity touched the villagers, and slowly, even the staff began to soften. On the day of the event, when Madame Lan arrived unannounced to observe, she found a scene that surprised her. Dozens of children laughed and played with new books in hand, their parents expressing gratitude not to the family name, but directly to Tu Diem. Standing in the crowd, Diem looked different, not timid, not fragile, but radiant. Madame Lan's lips pressed together, her expression unreadable. But deep inside, something shifted. Later that evening, Toan asked his mother quietly, "Did you see her today?" Madame Lan paused before answering, "Yes. I saw a girl who refuses to bend, even when the world tells her to." Her voice softened, though pride still kept her firm. "But Toan, the question remains, will she endure when the storms are greater than a village gathering?" Toan smiled knowingly. "She will. Because she is stronger than she believes, and perhaps, stronger than even you imagine." Madame Lan said nothing more, but her silence was no longer cold, it was thoughtful. In life, there are moments when silence feels safer than truth. Many people bow their heads, believing that humility and patience will eventually earn them kindness. But Tu Diem's story reminds us that silence can also become a prison, locking away dignity and self-worth. When she finally raised her voice, not with anger, but with honesty and courage, everything began to change. For the first time, she showed not only others, but also herself that she was more than just a shadow. She proved that love is not about wealth or status, but about respect, loyalty, and the strength to stand side by side. Her journey teaches us that respect cannot be begged, for it must be claimed by living truthfully. Speaking with courage does not mean disrespecting others. It means honoring ourselves. Even when the world doubts us, our dignity shines the moment we refuse to bow unjustly. Most importantly, her courage reveals that true love thrives when both hearts stand as equals. Toan did not love Tu Diem because she was flawless. He loved her because she was real, brave, and unafraid to defend her worth. The lesson is clear. Never allow fear to silence your truth. Never let doubt make you smaller than you are. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is simply to lift our head, meet the world's gaze, and declare, "This is who I am, and I will not disappear."